Marcus Chen had been documenting conflicts for 8 years, but the dusty streets of Kandahar still made his chest tighten with each patrol. The morning sun cast long shadows between the concrete barriers as he adjusted his camera strap and checked his equipment one final time. His assignment was straightforward: capture the daily reality of coalition forces working alongside Afghan National Army units in the region's most contested district. The local population had been whispering about a ghost sniper for months. Someone who could pick off targets from impossible distances, then vanish without leaving so much as a footprint. Coalition intelligence had tagged him as Phantom, a former Afghan army marksman who had gone rogue after his family died in a drone strike 2 years earlier. Nobody had confirmed sightings, but the kill count was real enough. 17 coalition soldiers in the past 4 months, all single shots to the head or chest from ranges exceeding 800 meters. Marcus walked alongside Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez and her squad as they moved through the narrow market streets. His Canon 5D Mark IV had been acting up since yesterday. Occasionally, the autofocus would stick, and the image stabilization seemed jerky. He made a mental note to requisition replacement gear when they returned to base, but for now, he had work to do. The marketplace buzzed with typical morning activity. Vendors arranged vegetables in wooden crates while children darted between the stalls, their laughter mixing with the calls of merchants advertising their wares. Marcus raised his camera and began shooting, capturing the contrast between normalcy and the ever-present tension that hung in the air like morning mist. Rodriguez's radio crackled. "Overwatch. This is Ground Team Alpha. We're approaching Checkpoint Delta. Everything looks quiet." "Copy that, Alpha. Maintain standard patrol pattern. No reported hostile activity in your sector." Marcus continued photographing, focusing on a group of elderly men sharing tea outside a small shop. Through his viewfinder, he noticed movement on a rooftop approximately 4 blocks away. Just a shadow, really, but something that didn't belong. He lowered the camera and squinted in that direction, but saw nothing unusual. The squad moved deeper into the market district. Marcus documented everything: the careful way soldiers checked doorways, the suspicious glances from some locals, the genuine smiles from others. This was the story he wanted to tell: the complexity of modern warfare, where enemies and friends often looked identical until the shooting started. Around noon, they took position at a small intersection to provide overwatch for another patrol moving through a parallel street. Marcus found himself a good vantage point behind a concrete barrier and began setting up for some distance shots. As he adjusted his camera settings, the autofocus motor made a strange grinding noise. "Come on, don't fail me now," he muttered, cycling the focus manually. Rodriguez noticed his frustration. "Equipment problems? Just some quirks, nothing I can't work around." Marcus raised the camera again and aimed toward the distant buildings where he thought he'd seen movement earlier. The viewfinder suddenly went completely black. He pulled the camera away and saw that the LCD screen was flickering between normal operation and complete darkness. The internal electronics were definitely malfunctioning, possibly due to the dust and heat. He tried turning it off and on again, but the problem persisted. "Damn it," he whispered, checking all the connections and battery levels. Then something strange happened. As the LCD flickered, it began displaying what looked like thermal imaging instead of normal visible light. The malfunction had somehow activated infrared sensors that shouldn't have been active, and the camera was now showing heat signatures through the buildings. Marcus stared at the display in confusion. Most of the heat signatures made sense: people moving around inside buildings, the warm spots where vehicles had been parked. But there was one signature that caught his attention immediately. On the rooftop of a building, roughly 600 meters away, a single heat signature lay perfectly still in a prone shooting position. The figure hadn't moved in the 10 minutes Marcus had been watching, and the position offered a clear line of sight to the intersection where they were currently stationed. "Lieutenant?" Marcus called quietly. Rodriguez moved closer. "What is it?" "My camera is malfunctioning, but it's showing something weird. Look at this." He showed her the display, pointing to the motionless figure on the distant rooftop. Rodriguez studied the image carefully. "That position has a perfect angle on us. And whoever that is hasn't moved at all since I started watching." She immediately got on the radio. "Overwatch, this is Alpha. We have a possible hostile shooter in a static position. Grid reference." She rattled off coordinates while studying the camera display. "Alpha, we show no friendly forces in that area. Can you confirm visual?" Marcus switched his camera back to normal mode, but the electronics were too scrambled to provide clear imagery. The thermal malfunction had given them their only clear view of the target. "Negative on visual confirmation, but we have thermal imaging showing someone in a sniper position." "Copy that. Drone support is en route. Maintain your position and keep eyes on target." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. If this was really the phantom sniper they'd been hunting, his malfunctioning camera had just accomplished what months of intelligence gathering had failed to do, but it also meant they were currently sitting in his crosshairs. Rodriguez made hand signals to her squad, indicating potential sniper threat. The soldiers immediately took better cover positions while maintaining surveillance on the target building. Marcus continued monitoring his camera display, hoping the thermal malfunction would continue long enough to track their target. Minutes crawled by. The heat signature remained motionless, confirming that this wasn't just someone taking a nap on a rooftop. Professional snipers could maintain shooting positions for hours without moving, and this person showed exactly that kind of discipline. A Predator drone arrived overhead, invisible from the ground, but providing real-time surveillance footage to the command center. Through Rodriguez's radio, they heard the confirmation. "Alpha, drone feed confirms one individual in prone position with what appears to be a long rifle. This matches the profile of your ghost sniper." Marcus realized he was witnessing history. His broken camera had accomplished something that sophisticated military surveillance had been unable to do for months. The Phantom was about to become very real and very exposed. The radio crackled again. "Alpha, additional units are moving to surround the target building. Maintain overwatch and be prepared for the subject to attempt escape or engage." Rodriguez nodded to her squad. "You heard them. Eyes open. Safety's off. This could get interesting fast." Marcus kept his malfunctioning camera trained on the thermal signature, serving as the only real-time confirmation of the target's exact position. The irony wasn't lost on him. The most important photograph of his career might be one that nobody would ever see, captured by equipment that was technically broken. As military vehicles began positioning themselves around the target building's perimeter, Marcus realized that his simple documentation assignment had just turned into the kind of story that would define careers. The ghost sniper was about to be cornered, and Marcus was holding the only technology that could track his movements in real time. The heat signature on his camera display suddenly shifted slightly. The Phantom was preparing to move. The heat signature on Marcus's camera display began moving with deliberate precision. Through the flickering thermal imaging, he watched the Phantom slowly shift from his prone position to a low crawl, moving toward the back edge of the rooftop. "He's moving," Marcus whispered urgently into Rodriguez's radio. "Heading toward the rear of the building." "Copy that. Drone, do you have visual on target movement?" The response came back immediately. "Negative visual. Target is using the roof structure for concealment. Your thermal source is our only real-time tracking." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 17 soldiers had died because of this man, and now a malfunctioning camera was the only thing preventing him from disappearing again into the maze of Kandahar's urban landscape. The thermal signature paused near what appeared to be a rooftop access door. For nearly 3 minutes, the figure remained motionless again, likely listening for sounds of approaching forces. Marcus's camera continued its erratic behavior, occasionally switching back to normal mode and showing nothing but empty rooftops, then flickering back to thermal imaging that revealed the sniper's exact position. "Target is at the roof access," Marcus reported. "Still stationary." Rodriguez had deployed her squad in a wide arc around their position, maintaining overwatch while additional units moved to seal off the target building. The complexity of urban warfare meant they couldn't just storm in blindly. Too many innocent civilians lived in the surrounding buildings, and the Phantom had already proven his ability to kill from extreme distances. A new voice came over the radio. Colonel Harrison from the base command center. "All units, this is actual. Rules of engagement are capture if possible, eliminate if necessary. Civilian protection is priority 1. We believe this target is responsible for multiple coalition casualties." Marcus watched the thermal display as the figure finally moved toward the access door. The signature became fainter as the target moved inside the building structure, but Marcus could still track the movement down what appeared to be a stairwell. "He's inside now, moving down through the building," Marcus announced. "Ground teams Alpha 3 and Bravo 2, target is descending through the structure. Be advised, subject is armed and extremely dangerous." Marcus continued monitoring his camera while the operation unfolded around him. Through his earpiece, he could hear multiple radio channels coordinating the complex manhunt. Teams were moving through adjacent buildings, clearing potential escape routes while maintaining a perimeter around the target structure. The thermal signature suddenly disappeared from his display completely. Marcus frantically adjusted settings, thinking the camera had finally died completely, but then realized the truth. The target had moved into a part of the building where the thermal imaging couldn't penetrate effectively. "I've lost thermal contact," he reported. "Subject went dark." Rodriguez immediately relayed this to command. The response was swift. "All units, thermal tracking is compromised. Switch to visual confirmation protocols." What followed was the most tense 15 minutes of Marcus's career. Radio chatter indicated that multiple teams were now inside the building, methodically clearing floor by floor, while others maintained perimeter security. The Phantom had vanished again, but this time he was trapped inside a building surrounded by coalition forces. Marcus kept his malfunctioning camera trained on the building, hoping for any flicker of thermal imaging that might reveal their target's location. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. The most sophisticated military operation he'd ever witnessed was being guided by a piece of broken photography equipment. A sudden burst of gunfire erupted from the building's 3rd floor. Single shots, precise and controlled, the signature of a professional marksman. The radio exploded with activity. Shots fired, 3rd floor, east side. Bravo 2 is taking fire from an elevated position. Subject is armed with a high-powered rifle. Repeat, subject is armed and engaging." Marcus instinctively ducked behind cover while maintaining his camera position. Through the chaos of radio communications, he began to piece together what was happening inside the building. The Phantom hadn't been cornered. He had deliberately drawn the coalition forces into a confined space where his marksmanship skills would be most effective. More gunfire echoed from the building. This time, multiple weapons were firing, indicating that coalition forces were returning fire. Marcus's camera suddenly flickered back to thermal mode, and he could see multiple heat signatures moving rapidly through the building's interior. "Thermal is back," he announced. "I'm seeing multiple signatures in motion, 3rd floor. Can you identify the target?" Marcus studied the display carefully. Most of the heat signatures were moving in coordinated patterns consistent with military tactics. But one signature was moving differently, independently, unpredictably, using the building's structure for concealment. "I think I have him. Single signature moving alone, using cover differently than your teams. Guide us in." For the next several minutes, Marcus became the eyes of the entire operation. His broken camera provided real-time intelligence that allowed ground teams to track the Phantom's movements through the building's maze-like interior. It was like watching a deadly game of chess played out in thermal imaging. The target moved with incredible skill, avoiding contact with the pursuing forces while maintaining offensive positions. Marcus realized he was documenting the actions of someone who truly understood urban warfare at a level that bordered on artistry. "He's moving toward the northwest stairwell," Marcus reported, "descending rapidly." "Copy that. Alpha 3, intercept target at northwest stairs." But the Phantom was too clever. By the time Alpha 3 reached the stairwell, the thermal signature had already moved to a completely different part of the building. Marcus watched in fascination as the figure used ventilation shafts, maintenance areas, and even external fire escapes to stay one step ahead of the pursuing forces. "This guy knows this building like he owns it," Rodriguez observed, studying Marcus's camera display. "He probably does," Marcus replied. "Or he's been planning this for a long time." The realization hit them both simultaneously. This wasn't a desperate escape attempt. The Phantom had deliberately chosen this building as a fallback position, knowing exactly how he would evade capture when the time came. As if to confirm their suspicions, the thermal signature suddenly moved to what appeared to be a basement level. Marcus had been tracking the target for over an hour, and this was the first time he'd seen movement below ground level. "He's going underground," Marcus announced. "Copy that. Be advised, building schematics show a basement level with multiple exits to adjacent structures." Marcus felt his stomach drop. They weren't just chasing one of the most dangerous snipers in Afghanistan. They were chasing someone who had spent months preparing for exactly this scenario. The broken camera had exposed his position, but it might not be enough to capture him. The thermal signature moved through what appeared to be a tunnel system connecting multiple buildings. Marcus tracked the movement until his camera finally lost contact completely, the target disappearing into underground passages that military intelligence hadn't even known existed. "Thermal contact lost," Marcus reported quietly. "Subject has entered what appears to be a tunnel system." The radio fell silent for a moment before Colonel Harrison's voice returned. "All units, expand perimeter to include surrounding buildings. Subject is using underground routes for escape and evasion." Marcus lowered his camera and looked at Rodriguez. They both knew what this meant. The ghost sniper had become a ghost again, but this time they had learned something crucial about his capabilities and preparation. The hunt would continue, but it would be much more difficult now that the Phantom knew they could track him with thermal imaging. As coalition forces expanded their search perimeter and began exploring the tunnel system, Marcus realized that his malfunctioning camera had changed everything. They might not have captured the Phantom today, but they had proven that he could be found, tracked, and cornered. The ghost was real, and now they knew how to hunt ghosts. 3 weeks after the failed capture operation, Marcus found himself sitting in a secure briefing room at Bagram Airfield, surrounded by intelligence officers, military contractors, and technical specialists. His malfunctioning camera sat on the table in front of them, now completely disassembled by military engineers who were trying to understand exactly how the thermal malfunction had occurred. "The modification appears to be deliberate," explained Captain Jennifer Walsh, the lead technical analyst. "Someone with advanced knowledge of camera electronics bypassed the normal infrared filters and connected the thermal sensors directly to the main display circuit." Colonel Harrison leaned forward. "You're saying someone sabotaged Mr. Chen's equipment?" "Not sabotaged, enhanced. This is sophisticated work, professional level." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you suggesting that someone wanted me to discover the sniper?" The room fell silent for a moment before Major Stevens, the intelligence coordinator, spoke up. "We've been analyzing communications intercepts from the past month. There are indications that the Phantom has been attempting to make contact with coalition forces." "Contact? He's been killing our people for months." "Yes, but the pattern changed after his family died. Intel suggests he may have been targeting specific individuals. people he believed were responsible for the drone strike that killed his wife and children. Marcus stared at the disassembled camera. So my equipment was modified to help expose him? We believe so, and we think we know who modified it. Captain Walsh activated a laptop and displayed a photograph on the wall screen. It showed a middle-aged Afghan man with engineering background, formerly employed by the coalition forces as a technical contractor. Meet Ahmad Nazir, former Afghan National Army communications specialist, later worked as a civilian contractor for coalition technical support. His cousin was the Phantom's wife. The pieces began falling into place for Marcus. He had access to my equipment during routine maintenance checks at the base. Correct. And according to communications intercepts, he was working with his cousin-in-law to arrange a meeting. The thermal malfunction was designed to expose the Phantom's position when he was ready to surrender, not when he was actively hunting. Major Stevens pulled up additional files on his tablet. The problem was timing. Our operation moved too quickly. Before the Phantom was prepared to give himself up, that's why he was able to escape through those pre-planned routes. Marcus felt the weight of unintended consequences. So I inadvertently sabotaged a surrender attempt? Not necessarily, Colonel Harrison interjected. 3 days ago, we received a message through Afghan intermediaries. The Phantom wants to meet. The briefing room atmosphere shifted dramatically. This was clearly new information that not everyone had been briefed on previously. He's requesting to meet with the combat correspondent whose camera exposed his position. He wants to meet with you, Mr. Chen. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Meet with me? Why? According to the message, he wants to tell his story. He believes the world needs to understand why he did what he did. And he wants someone he considers unbiased to document it. Captain Walsh activated another display showing recent satellite imagery. The proposed meeting location is a small village approximately 40 kilometers northeast of Kandahar. It's in a neutral area where neither coalition forces nor Taliban have significant presence. This could be a trap, Rodriguez observed. She had been included in the briefing because of her role in the original operation. It could be, Major Stevens agreed. But our psychological profile suggests otherwise. The Phantom's actions over the past months indicate someone seeking resolution, not escalation. The tunnel escape system was designed for survival, not for setting up ambushes. Colonel Harrison looked directly at Marcus. The decision is yours, Mr. Chen. We can't order you to take this risk, but if you're willing, we'll provide full security support. Marcus studied the satellite images of the proposed meeting location. It was a small farming village, the kind of place where his presence would be immediately obvious to everyone within miles. If the Phantom wanted to kill him, there would be dozens of easier opportunities. What does he want from me specifically? According to the intermediary, he wants to surrender formally and have his story documented by someone who isn't part of the military command structure. He considers you a neutral observer. The irony of the situation struck Marcus profoundly. He had spent his entire career documenting conflicts from the outside, always maintaining journalistic objectivity. Now he was being drawn directly into the center of one of Afghanistan's most complex personal tragedies. If I agree to this meeting, what guarantees do I have? Honestly, none, Colonel Harrison replied. But we'll have Overwatch teams positioned around the village, and you'll be equipped with emergency communications. The first sign of trouble, we extract you immediately. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of military professionals who were asking him to take an extraordinary risk. But he also realized that this was exactly the kind of story he had come to Afghanistan to tell, the human complexity behind the headlines, the personal motivations that drove people to extremes. I'll do it. 2 days later, Marcus found himself walking alone through the dusty streets of a village that felt like it existed in a different century. Children followed him at a distance while women watched from doorways. His camera, now repaired and functioning normally, hung around his neck, but he had strict instructions not to photograph anything until the meeting actually took place. The village elder led him to a small tea house where a single figure sat in the shadows of the back corner. As Marcus approached, the man stood and extended his hand in greeting. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming." The phantom was not what Marcus had expected. Instead of a hardened killer, he saw a man ravaged by grief, someone who looked like he hadn't slept properly in months. His eyes held the particular emptiness that Marcus had seen in other people who had lost everything that mattered to them. They sat across from each other at a low wooden table while the tea house owner brought them glasses of green tea and then discreetly left them alone. "You want to know why?" the phantom said quietly. "I want to understand," Marcus replied, activating his digital recorder with the man's permission. What followed was 3 hours of the most intense interview of Marcus's career. The phantom, whose real name was Khalil Rahman, described the night his family died with clinical precision, explaining how a drone strike targeting suspected Taliban fighters had hit his home instead. His wife, 2 young daughters, and elderly mother had been killed instantly. "I served with coalition forces for 4 years, Rahman explained. "I believed in what we were trying to build. But when my family died, and when the investigation concluded it was an acceptable loss due to faulty intelligence, I realized that my service meant nothing." Marcus listened without interruption as Rahman described his transformation from Allied soldier to enemy sniper. The 17 coalition casualties hadn't been random. Each target had been someone Rahman held personally responsible for either the drone strike or the subsequent cover-up. "I never intended to disappear forever," Rahman continued. "I wanted to complete my mission and then tell the world what had happened. Your camera malfunction provided that opportunity, even though the timing was wrong." As the afternoon progressed, Marcus realized he was documenting something unprecedented. A first-hand account from someone who had crossed from ally to enemy and was now seeking redemption through truth-telling. When Rahman finally finished his story, he reached into his jacket and produced a detailed list of names, dates, and locations, a complete confession of his activities over the past year, along with intelligence about Taliban operations he had observed during his time in hiding. "This is my formal surrender," he said, handing the papers to Marcus. "I want you to document that I am turning myself over to coalition custody, and I want my story told accurately." Marcus accepted the papers with trembling hands, realizing that his career as a combat correspondent had just culminated in this extraordinary moment. The ghost sniper was choosing to become human again, and Marcus was the witness to that transformation. As they walked out of the tea house together, coalition vehicles appeared on the horizon, the security teams moving in to take Rahman into custody. Marcus raised his camera and began photographing, but this time he was documenting redemption rather than warfare. The story would win him a Pulitzer Prize 6 months later, but Marcus always remembered it as the assignment where his broken equipment had fixed something much more important than technical malfunctions. It had helped a lost man find his way back to his own humanity.